Have you ever wondered why water and oil refuse to mix? Or why some substances dissolve in water while others do not? The answers to these questions lie in the fascinating world of chemistry, more specifically within the concept of polar and nonpolar bonds. Often you see, atoms don't like to be alone. They prefer to bond with others, forming molecules. But not all bonds are created equal. Sometimes atoms share their electrons equally and sometimes they don't. This is where the story of polar and nonpolar bonds begins. Consider a tug-of-war game. If both teams are of equal strength, the rope stays in the middle. This is similar to a nonpolar bond, where atoms share electrons equally. Examples of nonpolar bonds include the bonds between two hydrogen atoms or two oxygen atoms. On the other hand, if one team is stronger, it pulls the rope towards itself. This is like a polar bond, where one atom pulls the shared electrons closer to itself. Water is a perfect example of a polar bond. The oxygen atom pulls the electrons from the hydrogen atoms closer, creating a slight charge imbalance. Now, what happens when polar and nonpolar substances come into play? Picture a party where two groups of people speak different languages. They would naturally segregate into separate groups, right? The same happens with polar and nonpolar substances. Polar substances mix with other polar substances, and nonpolar substances mix with nonpolar substances. This is why oil, a nonpolar substance, and water, a polar substance, don't mix. To summarize, the key difference between polar and nonpolar bonds lies in the way atoms share their electrons. In polar bonds, atoms share electrons unequally, creating a slight charge imbalance, while in nonpolar bonds, atoms share electrons equally. This distinction determines how different substances interact with each other, explaining why some substances mix while others don't. So the next time you see oil floating on water or salt dissolving in your soup, remember it's all about the bonds. The invisible ties between atoms, polar and nonpolar, are what govern the behavior of the substances around us, making our world as diverse and interesting as it is.